So, let's talk about Islamic finance. You've probably heard the term, and maybe you just figured, hey, it's just regular finance with a different label. But what if it's not just a label? What if it's a whole different philosophy about how money should work? Well, that's what we're going to unpack right now.
And this is the question that gets right to the heart of it. Is an Islamic bond just a regular bond in disguise? The short answer? Absolutely not. But the long answer? Well, that's where things get really interesting, because it opens up a totally different financial universe.
You see, to really get the difference, we can't just jump into looking at a product. No, we've got to start with the core philosophy. It's this one, single, really powerful idea that changes literally everything that comes after it.
And here it is, the fundamental fork in the road. Conventional finance is built on the idea that you can make money from money. You lend it out, you charge interest. But Islamic finance says, nope, not so fast. To earn a return, your money has to be tied directly to a real, tangible economic activity, like, say, a building that generates rent or a business that sells actual products.
This is the golden rule, the absolute bedrock of the whole system. Money is just a tool, right? It's not a commodity that you can just rent out by itself. For money to grow, it has to be put to work in the real economy, creating actual value. And this one principle, it dictates everything else we're about to talk about. Okay, so to make sure every single transaction sticks to that core philosophy, the entire system is built around three major prohibitions. Just think of them as the essential guardrails that keep all the financial traffic moving in the right direction. First up, the big one, the one most people have heard of, riba. This is the prohibition against interest. It basically says you can't earn a guaranteed profit just because you lent someone money and a calendar page turned over. Your return has to come from a productive activity, not from the debt itself. Next on the list is gharar. Now, this one is all about clarity. It's a rule against excessive uncertainty. You can't have a contract where the really important stuff, like what's actually being sold, or for how much, or when it'll be delivered, is all vague and up in the air. The whole point is to ensure fairness and prevent disputes down the line. And that brings us to our third guardrail, maisir. This prohibits any transaction that's based on pure speculation or gambling. In other words, you can't gain wealth just by chance. Your gain has to be linked to some kind of genuine economic effort, or sharing in the risk of a real, productive business.
So, let's put it all together. With those three rules of the road in place, no interest, no excessive ambiguity, and no gambling, let's circle all the way back to our original question. What does this mean for something like a bond? Let's put a conventional bond head-to-head with its Islamic alternative, the Sukuk.
Okay, this table makes it crystal clear. When you buy a bond, you're basically a lender. The bond is just a fancy IOU that says the issuer owes you money plus interest. But with a Sukuk, you're not a lender, you're a part owner. That certificate represents a real, fractional ownership in a tangible asset. And your return isn't interest, it's your share of the actual income that asset generates, like rent. This also totally changes the risk profile. If things go south, a bondholder is just another creditor. But a Sukuk holder, you own a piece of that underperforming asset. You share in the loss. It's real skin in the game.
And that's the key takeaway. It's a complete mental shift, from thinking like a lender to thinking like an owner. That single distinction changes the entire risk-reward dynamic and, most importantly, guarantees that the investment is tied to something real.
All right, so this ownership model sounds interesting, but how does it actually work in the real world? Well, the most popular way by far is through a leasing structure, which is called an ijara sukuk.
And when I say popular, I mean it. Look at this. Leasing-based sukuk, or ijara, completely dominate the market. And believe me, that's no accident. Their popularity comes down to a few very smart, very practical reasons. And really, the appeal is just so obvious, isn't it? The whole concept is incredibly easy to get your head around. You co-own a thing, that thing gets leased out, and you collect your share of the rent. Simple. This setup gives investors a predictable stream of income that's tied to a specific transparent asset, all packaged up with clear rules and solid governance. It just checks all the boxes for a stable investment.
Okay, but this all sounds great in theory. How do you actually prove it? As an investor, how do you know for sure that your sukuk is really tied to a physical asset and isn't just, a loan dressed up in fancy language?
And this is where the rubber really meets the road. The trust in this entire system isn't based on a handshake or a promise. It's built on a rock-solid foundation of legal and operational documents that prove ownership and spell out every single right and responsibility.
These aren't just extra files you stick in a drawer. They are the absolute pillars of trust. The prospectus lays out the whole game plan. The purchase agreement is your proof of ownership. The lease agreement defines your income. A trustee is there to watch your back. And finally, a compliance certificate confirms it all follows the rules. Every single step is documented, creating this unbreakable chain of proof.
Ultimately, it really just boils down to this simple idea. In this financial ecosystem, transparency isn't just a nice-to-have feature. It is the entire foundation. The documents are what create the trust, and that trust is what gives you the confidence that you're buying exactly what you think you are, a piece of a real productive asset.
So there you have it. An Islamic bond isn't a bond at all, it's a certificate of ownership. And in a world where finance is getting more and more abstract, where value can feel a bit virtual, it leaves us with a pretty compelling question to think about. What can we all learn from a system that still demands a clear, unbreakable link to tangible value? Something to chew on. Thanks for tuning in.